Hello, I'm Don Pollock, station manager for LVTV. Tonight we're proud to bring you one installment of a four-part series, Men Who Shaped the Institution, an oral history of Verne College and the University of Laverne. Tonight's guest is noted educator, author, and lecturer, Dr. Leland Newcomer. Dr. Newcomer is a Verne College graduate who went on to earn his doctorate in education at the University of Southern California and has worked as a teacher, administrator, and educational consultant his whole career. Dr. Newcomer also served as Verne College president from 1968 to 1975. Dr. Newcomer brought enormous change to Verne College, essentially changing a small, private, local brethren college with 800 undergraduate students into a globally known institution with programs around California and Alaska and in Europe and Asia that serves over 7,000 students. Under Dr. Newcomer's leadership, Verne College has evolved into the University of Laverne. Among Dr. Newcomer's accomplishments are the creation of what is now the School of Continuing Education, the ULV Law School, the doctoral programs. He also was responsible for building the super tents, and I understand also started the freshman camp. Dr. Newcomer, welcome.
Thank you.
You came to Laverne at a time of great social change, and that's part of your legacy, as you're known for change. Tell us about how you developed some of your ideas about higher education that you brought to Laverne.
Well, actually, I'm not sure I had too many ideas about higher education when I came to Laverne. Probably was one of the most unprepared neophyte college presidents at that time. But I developed a tremendous amount of interest in higher education, and I had been very, very much interested in public education, essentially K-12 and community college prior to that.
Now, you were a Verne College graduate. There was something that brought you back here a number of years later to serve as president.
Well, yeah, I was born and raised here, and then spent about 3.5 years in the military out of the country, and I went to Verne College and married in my senior year, and then I came back and went into teaching and went through the chairs, a variety of different things. And I had a great experience, and I enjoyed it, and I then had a reputation for changing things a bit, and particularly when I was in Las Vegas, Clark County School District, and really how I got to Laverne was rather unique in that I was at the time the superintendent of the Newport Mesa, newly unified Newport Mesa School District in Newport Beach, Corona Del Mar, Costa Mesa, and the committee of the executive committee of the board here at Laverne, Board of Trustees, came down to see me and surprised me and wanted to know whether I would be interested in becoming the president of Laverne. And I really kind of thought they were kidding. I mean, I sort of laughed and I said, "You've got to be kidding." No, they wouldn't. I said, "Well, I'm not sure I'm the right person for there." And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I think every president that you had up to this time has been a brother minister, and I sure am not a brother minister." And so I just, and then they went on to say that they really were very much interested in the college becoming known and viewed as a quality educational institution rather than as essentially a church college.
So they said, we're prepared to change.
Yeah, they said that, and that intrigued me. And then, right at that time, another incident happened that kind of triggered me into it, and I've been trying to put a bond election over there, and that this was the wealthiest school district in California at the time.
And this is Newport Mesa.
Yeah, maybe Beverly Hills might be just a little more. But, and I tried to put a bond issue over twice. And in the last one, as I was out beating the bushes for votes, yes votes, I said, you know, if you people, you know, are going to force me to have double sessions through the 3rd or 4th grade in this district when you're the richest in the country, you don't need me as your superintendent. And they thought I was a pretty good educator. They wanted me. They thought I was kidding. That bond election failed at a 66.2 or something like that, just by a few hundred votes. And so I, in essence, contacted the trustees and I said, you still serious? And they said yes. And I said, well, I would be now. Then I called a press conference and said, you people don't deserve quality. I was upset and blasted them, and came to Laverne.
Tell us a little bit about what the college was like when you came here in 1968.
Well, it was a small, I think maybe 700, 800 kids, something like that, and liberal arts college, known for training good teachers and for preparing people for theological seminaries and the ministry. And then other good brethren kids for various other kinds of things. I think that's what it was known for the years before. I think it was beginning to move out of that and becoming a more, but it was still pretty much a church college.
So during your time here, you developed some ideas about the future of higher education and worked to get Laverne to develop some of those ideas. So I don't know if you can talk a little bit about this. One of the things that you're known for is trying to change the focus from a teacher-oriented education to a learner-oriented.
Yeah, well, I had really been working on that for a number of years at the K-12 level, and the uniqueness, the opportunity at Laverne was greater than the opportunity really in a large public school system, because there's so much politics. Now that doesn't mean there aren't politics in colleges. There are, and there are politics in the governance and certainly faculty politics and that sort of thing. But it's different. You don't have the anyway. I really worked on the idea that the essential purpose of schooling is learning, student development, and the outcome is an educated student, or teaching is the means, not the end. And I felt, as I knew education, that too much emphasis, and particularly at the college level, it was teaching. I didn't feel that at the college level they zeroed in on who the kids were and what their needs were, as much as they did, say, in other areas. It was the subject matter. It was what kids should know, and I felt it was what kids should be.
Mm-hmm. And how did that change get implemented into a philosophy or into practice?
Well, probably the See, I've said that the essential measurement of of quality education is student learning. And if a student can demonstrate that they have learned, they shouldn't have to take the course. And seat time, I said, was an old idea. Well, to the Western Association of Colleges and whatever that
WASC,
WASC, that was almost heresy at the college level. And I had instituted, when I was in Las Vegas, Clark County School, a program for students to challenge courses. And the teachers the faculty could develop the criteria for evaluating, but they could challenge a course, and then they could go on and take other kinds of things. When I came to Laverne, we were attracting some pretty bright, sharp kids, and I just felt that a lot of them knew a lot of what was going on, particularly in English. You know, in a basic English course that everybody had to take, English 1A or 101 or whatever it might be. And so anyway, we instituted a challenge.
So ways to challenge out of classes.
Yeah.
But one of the other big things that got started was the field studies program that evolved into what's now the School of Continuing Education. So this was the whole notion that maybe we can't do things the old way and wait for young people to find us here, but we need to find ways to go out to where people are and provide education to them, and maybe not just to traditional age undergraduates.
Yeah, and that was a part of part of that was marketing the college in a sense, in the service that we had, and make it be desired. And I saw, and a lot of others saw, it was just me, the tremendous need for education in a variety of places. So when we worked on the mission of Laverne at that time, we said, Laverne's mission is to provide quality teaching and learning services wherever they're needed and wherever we can meet them competently. And then we started expanding. Yeah, you know, best example of that is what then, I don't know whether it's still here or not, the LV Kappa program, but it was a program for so-called mature adults who had a lot of life experience, who didn't have a degree, and they wanted to get a degree. There's a lot of people like that out there.
We still have quite a few students in that program.
Well, that one really struck a chord with a lot of people. In fact, the person whom well, maybe I shouldn't say that here, but there was a very well-known person on the Board of Trustees who was really well-known, big, very successful person in the business world, and came up to me after I was emoting about this stuff, and said, you know, tell me about that program. Is that really true? And then he confided in me that he was teaching graduate courses in the summer school at Stanford, but he'd never gotten his BA degree. Nobody knew that because he was in such an elevated executive position in the country. And I said, yeah, and we talked about it. He says, well, what do I have to do? And I said, well, you got to do we have one requirement. Everything else, you can demonstrate knowledge and learning and all that kind of stuff. Our faculty will evaluate that to determine whether you meet those criteria, except for one thing. You got to do a hands-on art. You know, the faculty prevailed on me with this one. They were a liberal arts college, and they got to do something. You know, they got to do something creative. And so we had the tent, you know, and the art stuff in there at that time instead of where it was. And anyway, he came in, and I remember one Saturday morning, I saw him down there in jeans and tennis shoes, just clay all over him, up and down and everything else, doing ceramics or whatever you want to call it. And that man, to this day, he's very, 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 very strong supporter of the work. He got his degree here in that program, which you know, that plus, and I got in real trouble. I got real trouble with one program.
was going to ask you about the military.
The military, yeah. that got me in real big trouble with the church, because, you know, the Brethren Church is extremely pacifist. You know, and I was brought up and I understood that. But we offered, there was the real need on military bases all over. And they wanted the service. And they were willing to pay for it. And so we did it. In fact, Herb Hogan, who's still around here and was my dean and then vice president of the college here, he was one of the people who implemented that and really made sure that it met the academic rigor that it should. And that probably saved my soul a bit there, or saved my something.
Your job.
Yeah, or something, because he lent academic credibility to those programs out there and said, hey, that was a good service. And the people that were really upset just because it was aiding and abetting the military, I said, you know, it's not. It's aiding and abetting human beings. I don't care. We don't care where they are. You know, I would have gone like mad to put programs into prisons. Didn't.
That's something that's actually happened, and we now run programs in prison. Talk about some of the other things that happened during your tenure here. What about the creation of the law school?
Well, that really came about because Judge Egley, a young judge over in the Covina area, was doing some night classes, or he had something going, and he wanted to give it academic credibility and so forth. So he came to me about that, and as a result of that, we talked about it, and we ended up doing. And I understand now they're getting somewhat close to American Bar Association accreditation.
They're going to work accreditation, and part of that's the move going to Ontario and getting a bigger facility.
Beautiful.
With a bigger library.
Yeah, but you got to give Judge Egley a real lot of that. He was the father and the pusher of that one, and we did battle because it was his program. I said no longer. It's now a part of the college, and he wasn't sure. He wanted the college's name, but he didn't want us meddling.
Not to lose control.
Right. So we had a little tassel over that.
What about the EDD program, the Doctorate in Education program?
Well, that one I had I think I had quite a bit to do with. A bright young guy named Tom Fine, I found, and I'd known him before I came here, and he's one of the most creative change agents I have ever seen any place in my life. And I had just finished not too long prior to that a doctoral program at USC, and probably shouldn't say this publicly, but I wasn't too impressed with the program I'd been in. And actually, the doctoral program here was a creation of Tom Fine's and mine in reaction to not just USC's program, but a whole bunch of doctoral programs.
An old way of doing it.
Yeah, memorizing, knowing this, knowing that, knowing this, and not doing. And we said, you know, what particularly educational leaders need, they need to know how to lead and manage change. And Tom Fine is the brightest, most creative guy that I think I've ever run into, and he worked with me on that, and we knew that we couldn't do that on our own. Claremont, by that time, Claremont colleges were noticing us a bit. They would have done, and I said, no, I knew that if we went with Claremont, they would
take over.
Yeah, or whatever, you know, they would. It wouldn't be Laverne. And so we finally ended up with a friend of mine who had just gone to Northern Colorado, Greeley, University of Northern Colorado, and we did that with them. And we organized a program, and we had summers here and some summers there, and I taught in it, and others did, but it was basically based on change episodes, and you had to be in service. You had to be a practicing administrator at that time, and that kind well, it went for 3 years there, and we were a little bit too non-traditional for them. And by the way, the current president was in that program right at the very beginning, and anyway, we took it back, and then right after, not too long after I left, it got full accreditation. The WAC went crazy about a doctoral. It was bad enough all the School of Continuing, we call it Field Studies, but you now call it the School of Continuing Ed. That drove them. That was really bothering them. The quality control. And I really worked on the quality control. We really had that one cooled, so that when they did do the accreditation, every obstacle that they held up, we could wipe out. And the doctoral program, really, I don't know how long ago it was under Tom. They were commended as one of the outstanding programs, and by quality people. That was a major accreditation. Was a major. I had a major conflict with the philosophy of accrediting agencies. They, number of books in the library, number of degrees that the professors had, number of books that the faculty published, all quantitative input, no output, no outcome. It was all based on a means, but no results. And so that's what I mean when learning is what it's about, not teaching. Teaching is the means.
We just had the latest WASC evaluation, and I think you'd be happy to know that they've come to us and said, how do you guys do it? How do you run the off-campus programs and then supervise the quality control using your on-campus people? They say, we think you guys are the model. So I think a lot of credit has to go to you for convincing WASC that this is the way to go.
That's really interesting, because when I was here at that time, some of the local colleges that we were in, Occidental and places like that, they really looked down their nose at what we were doing. And I got a big kick out of Oxy, then Gilman. The person by the name of Gilman was the president there. And he was really putting it down pretty badly. And not even while he was still there, but within the next 10 years I'd gone. So they ended up having that programs like that going in LA City schools, and we started, really a whole lot in the teacher training league. I knew public education, I knew schools, I knew that teaching, and we at one time had literally thousands of teachers in a program of training for schools without failure under Bill Glasser. Thousands all over the country, and it was a good program. Let's put it this way: it really increased the effectiveness of a lot of teachers.
Let's change gears a little bit. There were a lot of things that were needed at that time at the university, and there was limited money available. And one of the innovative things that happened was the building of what's come to be known as the super tents. And it's interesting that this rather silly structure has now become kind of the symbol of the university. But I don't know if you could talk about.
Yeah, that was it's kind of interesting. I had, before I came, and I guess one of the reasons why, again, that they were interested, I'd been rather fortunate in getting some pretty husky Ford Foundation grants and things like that in school districts where I was, to do innovative things. And I'd gotten a big grant up in Clark County, Nevada, and built some unique kind of schools. So I had a kind of a contact with that, and contact with some very creative architects, and Shaver, what's his first name, who was the one that was a real sharp guy, and I got and anyway, we got the idea of doing what we had done in other places, to take a lot of functions and put an umbrella over them. California has good weather most of the time, and so to make a long story short, that really was if we would have under traditional means handled the problem of facilities. We would have had to build a gymnasium, an art center, and a theater, and a student union, and a whole bunch of different buildings. And we encapsulated all that space and did some, and we were, you know, everybody thought we were nuts on that. They told us that it was only guaranteed. I remember this. I remember they said, you know, we could only guarantee the membrane for 20 years. And at that time, Steve, who's the current president, was my assistant at that point in time. And I remember we discussed that and said, and looked at each other and kind of smiled and said, you know, neither of us will be close to this place at that time. And you know, if we financially, what's the word for it? There's something in insurance they call it
fiduciary responsibility.
If it functioned effectively for 20 years, it would pay off. It would be a big plus. Mm-hmm. And that was well over 20. That was over 20 years. See, that was 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, the other interesting thing, I came back to the campus about maybe 5 years ago or something, and I ran into a fellow that I knew that was a maintenance man there that I'd known way back, a local somebody, and but he hadn't known my involvement at the college and some of that kind of stuff. He was relatively new there at the college, and and I, you know, oh hi, how's everything? He said, I don't know, but some crazy jerk put that crazy tent out there, and we're having fit. They were having a little problem with the maintenance of the stuff, and it's kind of difficult to get up there on that thing. You know, it's pretty slick.